Hey South, how's everybody doing? I hope that everybody is healthy and happy at home, working on schoolwork, but I do think that this schedule also does allow more opportunities if you're interested in exploring new hobbies or new areas of interest. It's a good opportunity to maybe try something new, pick up a new habit. With YouTube, it really does seem like you can learn pretty much any skill if you figure out the right search terms. So one thing that I am interested in is cooking. I really like cooking. I'm usually the one at my house who makes dinner for the family. So that is something that I thought I might share with you all today. My wife is interested in dance. That was her job for many years. And then as a side job now, she coaches dance, which is where the shirt comes from. But for tonight, we're going to talk about cooking. One of my family's favorite things to do is to make pizzas. We make our own pizzas at home. And so I'm going to walk you through today my recipe for making pizza dough. I actually really like making the pizza dough myself. It kind of gets everyone excited for pizza later in the day, because you make it early and then you let it rise, and it does fill the whole house with the smell of rising dough. Kind of gets everyone anticipating a nice night where you could make several small pizzas and either pick out your own favorite toppings or maybe even try new flavor combinations. As I go through this, I'm going to be using KitchenAid mixer. This makes everything a lot easier and a little bit faster, but just so you know, everything that we do can be done by hand as well. So if you don't have a mixer at home, don't worry about it. You can still do it. Using it by hand, it'll just be patient because it'll take a little bit longer to mix everything up. Whereas you'll see, once I put something in the mixer, I really like to be able to walk away from it and let it either mix up or knead and do a lot of the heavy work for me while I'm doing other things around the kitchen. And if you are using a mixer, that's a great opportunity to clean up as you go. There's two kinds of bakers in the world: those who are able to actually manage themselves pretty effectively, and those who like to use as many dishes and pans and utensils as possible. I unfortunately fall into that category, and so I am trying to get better about cleaning as I go, so that at the end of the night there isn't a sink full of dishes and pans to clean. But all right, so the first thing that we're going to do is gather our ingredients. All right. I do have a recipe for this, and I'll post the recipe so you don't have to worry about keeping everything exactly right. But to make 2 medium-sized pizzas, that's how much dough that we're going to make today. And so let me bring you over to the other table and we'll walk through that. All right, so obviously if you're making a bread, flour matters, right? And so one of the things that so I'm using 4 different kinds of flour. You do not need 4 kinds of flour. This is something that anyone can really make, so I don't want you to be too intimidated about trying to start. If this is something that you want to try today and you haven't baked anything before, don't worry about it. That's actually the first thing that I did too, because I love pizza. So the base of my dough is just straight up all-purpose flour. All right, this is really easy to get it in a big bag. There's going to be 2 cups of that. All right, I then do add in some whole wheat flour. I think it adds a little bit of fiber to the meal, but to be honest, I'm not sure it makes that much of a difference. Just pretty much habit at this point. Certainly that half cup could easily be replaced by the all-purpose. All right, if you can only have 2 kinds of flour and you find some bread flour, definitely add that. That's definitely worth it because it'll improve the texture of your dough. Okay, and so we're gonna add a half cup of that. And then this is the real secret. I uncovered this one, secret to the internet, I suppose, but Mr. Rainie's tip. If you can get your hands on some semolina flour, this is a great ingredient to add to pizza dough. As soon as I found this, which I actually found at the Ocean State job lot, so the price is even good for something that's hard to find. Semolina flour will make your dough a little bit more chewy, and so it actually ends up a lot more like what the dough that you get when you buy it at a restaurant. Prior to that, the pizza dough I was making was great, but it was almost it had risen too much. It was almost like real bread in a way. At least I didn't notice it at the time. I liked it, obviously, enough to keep making it, but as soon as I added the semolina flour, my wife was the first one to say, this is like real dough here. So that's Mr. Rainie's tip. All right, so you're just gonna add a little bit of that, 1 tablespoon. So 2 cups of all-purpose flour, half cup of bread flour, half cup of whole wheat, tablespoon of semolina. All right, so I've put all my flours in to the mixing bowl. You can see there's all sorts of different colors in there because I like to use all the different kinds. I'm gonna put that right into the mixing bowl. This is super lazy. I know that there's gonna be parents at home who bake and they're gonna be disgusted by the fact that I do this, but I'm lazy. So I have attached to the mixer the dough hook attachment. Again, you don't need the mixer to do this, but if you do and you get the dough hook, that was pretty good. It's pretty life-changing. If you don't have that, you can just use a wooden spoon and mix that up. And frankly, there's no reason not to do that at this point. I'm just cutting a corner. All right, I turned that on real low. I started it real slow so that it wouldn't kick up. And that's just gonna mix up all of the different kinds of flour. While that is mixing, we're gonna go over and start our yeast. All right, so yeast, this is a very important step because this is what actually gets your bread to rise. It's been a little bit hard to find yeast, but I actually managed to get some right before everything closed down. And so this is just active dry yeast is what you're gonna look for. I actually don't know if it's back in the stores yet because obviously I got really too big of a bag of it. But I'm sure that'll be coming back later. I actually did see some posts online about how you can get your own yeast out of stuff around the house too. So I might repost that too in case anyone is interested in trying this, but didn't have it at home. So I'm gonna be honest, this is take 2 of the yeast step here, and I kind of messed it up the first time. So it's already combined and resting. So I'll just let you know what I did was I took a 1.5 cups of lukewarm water. I let the water get hot in the kitchen sink and then kind of turned it back, ran my finger under it, and once it was warm, I filled up the measuring cup with a 1.5 cups of that. I added in 1 teaspoon of olive oil and 1/2 tablespoon of yeast, and then 1 teaspoon of sugar. Now that sugar is optional. I actually added it to this recipe. The yeast I've had is a little bit old, so that'll help get it activated again. And you'll see as we're sitting here, it'll start to froth up between the warm water and the sugar that I did add. That is part of the recipe, but it does note in the recipe that certainly if you have anyone in your house who's on a low sugar diet, just skip that. Okay, so we're gonna leave that here to rest. And you'll see, so the yeast now, the sugar and everything, the warm water, it starts to activate it. And so as you walk around the kitchen, you'll actually start to smell as it's working, doing its thing. And then you'll also start to see that it'll foam all along the top. And that's how you know it's working. Once we've let that rest for 5 minutes, maybe a little bit longer, we're gonna combine it with the flour that's all mixed up. And then we are going to be ready to start kneading the bread, mixing it all together. All right, so our yeast is setting up. I'm actually cheating a little bit because I realized that I had left some ingredients out of the flour mix. The flour itself is actually very well mixed up at this point. So you can see there's no more of like one color in one spot. It's all kind of blended together, which is exactly what we're going with. The piece that I had forgotten was we also need a 1.5 teaspoons of salt in here. So I'm going to add that now and then just keep mixing it up while the yeast is working before I combine everything. The other thing is, so we're adding my secret ingredient right now too, which is I really like garlic bread. So I add the salt. I also add about 1/8 teaspoon of garlic powder so that it's actually baked into the dough. And I'm not very good at stretching the pizza dough right now, so I guess maybe I'll get better before all this is over. So my crust ends up being usually a little bit bigger than it probably should be. So to have it be kind of like garlic bread at the end is my way of saving face, I guess. So we're just gonna start mixing that all up. All right, and we'll see how the yeast is doing. All right, so we've taken our flour, we've mixed in the yeast, and now we are kneading. The first thing you're gonna do is knead this for 3 minutes in the mixer, probably a little bit longer if you're going by hand, and then you're gonna let that rest for 15 minutes. At that point, you are going to knead it again for just another 3 minutes. And that's when we're going to end up splitting our dough if we want to make 2 regular-sized pizzas, if you want to make several mini pizzas, if you want to put some in the fridge or freezer and save it for later, you can do that at that point. You won't freeze it yet. You'll separate it at that point, and then you're going to let it rise first. So what I'm looking for here as this mixes up is everything mixing together really well. If it's too dry, you'll still see kind of like the dusty flour along the sides or at the top, and that's when you might need to add a little bit more water. You know, I said there's 2 kinds of bakers. Well, there's also 2 kinds of bakers. Those that believe in the precision of all of this stuff and those that kind of wing it. I am, again, in the latter category. I mostly follow the recipe, but you know, a lot of times my measurements are a little bit loose. So again, I'm sure there's real bakers out there that are in the South community watching this, shaking their heads at me. And please, believe me, feel free to send me any tips. I'm not great at all this stuff. In particular, baking is not my skill set. So any tips would be great, but also for anybody watching this, I'm sure they would benefit from hearing from somebody who knows better. While we're on that, any students who are out there who are interested in showing off a hobby or a skill of theirs, or parents, if you're doing something together and you want to film it and shoot me a video, we could add it to the South Daily Dose. That's a great idea. The teachers I know are very busy with grading a lot of work, you know, checking off everyone's work and then trying to write meaningful feedback for over 100 kids. It takes up a lot of time. So as we're not posting quite as many videos these days, you may have noticed, and in part that's because the teachers are working so hard to make sure that everybody's moving forward. So anyone in the South community who wants to show off a hobby, feel free to. If you want to have a dough competition, I will not be shy about conceding that I'm not great at this, but it seems to keep the kids happy. So our dough has been kneaded for 3 minutes. It was actually still pretty damp at that point, so I ended up adding about a ½ cup extra flour to just make sure that I had enough in there. I then let it rest for 15 minutes and kneaded it for another 3. And you can see at this point we have a nice dough ball, holds together when it's just sitting there, but when I touch it, nothing sticks to your hands. So that is a good consistency. What I'm going to do is I am going to divide this into half and let it rise separately. Now, part of the reason on that is that I want to use half tonight, make pizzas. I'm going to separate it once it's risen. And then the other half I'm going to put in the refrigerator, and about, you know, a couple days or so, I'm probably going to make calzones with it. So that's another good use for this dough. To rise, you're going to put the second half in a second bowl, cover them with a damp cloth, like a dish towel or something like that, clean and damp, and put it in a dark space. So this could be in a closet where it won't get touched for about 4 hours. I often will put it right into the oven, but if you do that, do not forget to take it out before you preheat the oven. I've made that mistake before. So damp cloth over the top and into a dark space. And after about 4 hours, it should have doubled in size. You want to at least let it rise for 3 hours, and it probably will have about doubled in size by then. But if you can push it for a few extra hours, that'll be better in the long run. Our dough has been rising for about 3.5 hours now, so we're going to take it out and see how we're doing. So this is bad film direction because I should have taken a before photo to show you, but this is definitely doubled in size. It's actually, looks like it's a little bit more than doubled. What you will see is when you push on the dough, it's really soft and airy. There's a ton of air in there, which is great. That means it's been rising really well over this time. The other thing is that you can see when I touched it, it's a little bit cool, damp to touch, but it does not stick to your finger in any way. That's exactly what you're looking for. And so this ended up pretty well, which I'm pretty happy about. So at that point, you're gonna wanna take it out of the bowl, roll it out nice and flat. You can try tossing it in the air. I do it over a counter. Again, voice of experience there. One of the tricks that I have learned is, and usually you would put flour down when you're rolling something out and then putting the toppings on it to make sure it doesn't stick to your counter or your baking sheet or whatever. If you use cornmeal, that'll give you that familiar, a lot of restaurants have the cornmeal on the bottom of their crust, and it makes it a little bit more chewy once you actually go into bake it. You're gonna preheat the oven to about 425 and then spread all your toppings around on it. And that can be anything, you know, I just use store-bought pizza sauce and spread that around and put pepperonis and cheese, or make a Hawaiian pizza, whatever you wanna do at that point. Once the oven's heated, put it in for just about 20 minutes and you should be good to go. Don't forget, once you take it out, to obviously use oven mitts and let it sit for about 5 minutes at least to cool down before you try to cut it up. Once it's cooled, cut it up and you should have nice crisp pieces. So I hope this has been interesting to folks. This is one way that I've been spending my time. I've been actually having more opportunities to cook for the family and try new recipes, but this is an old favorite, and I hope people will consider giving it a shot. All right, everyone stay well. Talk to you soon.